Okay, so this happened a while ago, and is pretty mild compared to some stories on here, but I think about it a lot. When it comes to getting my driver's license, I was a bit of a late bloomer. Living in the city, however, this wasn't a big deal as walking. Public transport and ride-share apps were all extremely accessible and I had no trouble getting where I needed to go. Most of the time I used Uber to get to work and met a lot of the local Uber drivers, some of which knew me by name. There were a few encounters of drivers, creeping but never too badly, so there's only one. Really sticks out and scares me to this day. I was maybe 23 at the time working an office job downtown and had ordered an Uber to take me home from work. I didn't recognize him, but everything was pretty normal at first. I hopped in, we said our hellos, he confirmed the address and we started driving. The driver was a guy in maybe his mid-30s, heavier set, smiley. He was continually glancing in the rearview mirror at me, more than average, and nearly immediately told me that he'd picked me up before, which as someone who Ubered almost daily did not strike me as all that odd. But then the things he was saying started to get really weird. He asked me why I didn't still work at my former job. I was surprised and a little bit alarmed that he'd remembered where I used to work, as I hadn't worked there since I was 19, so he had apparently remembered me from about 3 or 4 years ago. He also remembered my hometown, where I went to high school, college, what I was studying, and how many siblings I had, and confirmed it all with me, like you are from underscore, right? So you went to underscore high school, and you have 2 younger sisters, right? Still studying art history at underscore university. All of this might not be too odd for an attentive and friendly driver, except I was never a talkative passenger and usually avoided small talk and kept quiet in Ubers. I have no memory of ever telling any Uber driver this specific of information, as when asked I would give vague answers such as, oh, about 40 minutes south, or, yeah, I've got some siblings, I'm not close with them though. Anything to avoid giving details to the stranger who knows my address, so it was extremely weird to me that he remembered such detailed info about me. He then went on to ask a bunch of personal questions, such as my relationship status, what year 1 graduated high school, where I like to go out with friends. He also knew about my male roommate somehow, and inappropriately asked about my relationship to him. At this point I was getting extremely uncomfortable, and my answers were becoming more and more curt, but he was not taking the hint. It got to the point where I stopped being cooperative with the questioning at all and just started giving vague one-word answers or pretending not to hear the questions, until he gave up asking and moved on to the next. All in all, he had remembered quite a bit of personal information about me, much of which I had no memory of telling him, and had unabashedly asked for more. Despite my obvious discomfort, he did not stop questioning me about my personal life for the entirety of the 10-minute drive, all while glancing back at me through the rear view at every opportunity. Towards the end of the ride, he began complimenting me, telling me that my name was pretty and that I was very beautiful and smart, and saying that he hoped we were paired again because I was his favorite rider. Upon approaching my apartment, he asked which door was mine so that I wouldn't get wet. It wasn't raining, obviously. I told him my landlord's door, and he pulled up to my door anyway. Before he unlocked the door, he turned around to smile at me and said, "This is the longest ride we've taken together," before saying that he hoped to see me soon and told me to have a good night. I got out, walked around the side of the building and waited for him to leave, before immediately reporting him. Thankfully, this was back when Uber had real humans for customer service, and they responded that they would be blocking him from matching with me for future rides and would be investigating whether he will be allowed to use the app anymore. I took the bus for the next few weeks and never saw him again. I also never had another Uber ride like that again. It still creeps me out how he knew all that information about me. I am so glad I have moved since this happened. This happened a couple of months ago. I was at a friend's house one night and didn't realize how late it was, around 2 a.m. I love sleeping in my own bed, so I decided to call an Uber home instead of staying over. My friend lives in a more rural area of town, so it took a while to get an Uber, and it was around a 40-minute drive back to my house. Upon getting into the Uber, the first comment he made was telling me how pretty I was. Immediately red flags started going off in my head. I'm already a very anxious person and have always been afraid of taking Ubers alone, especially at night, so I was already on edge before the comment was made. I just replied thank you, and he started to drive me home. My friend was a boy and I assume the Uber saw him standing at the doorway before we left because around 5 minutes into the drive he asked, "Was that your boyfriend?" At this point, my gut feeling tells me something is wrong. I reply yes and say nothing further. He then proceeded to go on about how lucky my boyfriend was and, again, how pretty I was. At this point, I didn't answer. Around 10 minutes into the drive, the Uber driver tells me that he knows a quicker way to get to my house and we're going to take a detour. I immediately start to panic inside because as an anxious Uber rider, I consistently watch the Uber app on the driver's phone and need to be following the map. Also, this detour seemed to be going deeper down the rural roads, vs. into the city. I then called my dad, but because it was past 3 a.m. at this point, he didn't answer the phone. I then decide to call 911. The operator answers me right away, and I act like I'm talking to my dad on the phone. She immediately sensed that I was unable to tell her the exact situation, but I acted like I was telling my dad that I was in an Uber and would be home soon. She then started to ask me questions about the color of the car, by having me simply answer yes or no, the make of the car, my location, etc. She asked if I was in danger and I said I don't know. After telling her my location, she then told me to tell the Uber driver to get on the highway, because the detour he had taken consisted of more rural roads. Thankfully, we were only around 5 minutes from the highway and then another 10 minutes to the police station. She told me to tell the Uber driver to drop me off at a house in a neighborhood close to the police station. She gave me an exact address and advised that an officer would be waiting there for me to take me home. After politely trying to beg the Uber to change the address, he finally did and continued to go in that direction. I stayed on the phone with the operator until I got to the destination. Sure enough, an officer was waiting a couple of houses down. I got out of the Uber and walked straight towards the car. I'm not sure if I was overreacting about the situation due to my anxiety, especially by calling 911, but the alarms were going off so loud in my head that I genuinely thought I needed to in that situation. I now only take Uber alone in the daytime and always share my ride with my parents or friends. The creepiest Uber drive I ever had was in St. Petersburg. I just moved there and was out with some friends. Yes, this was after a night of drinking, but I was fully aware of what was happening. So, the Uber driver picked me up downtown around midnight. I was taking the Uber back home alone because my one friend lived downtown and I live about 15 minutes north of there. Anyway, when I take Ubers alone, I always try to sit in the front seat, just in case something were to happen, and someone attempted to child lock the doors or something like that, so I sat up front. The man who picked me up was a middle-aged Indian man with a very strong accent. I didn't think anything of it as I was from the NYC area and literally have had an Uber drivers of every race, ethnicity, age, act. I never previously had a problem with a middle-aged man. Normally they would just act like a dad or talk about their kids or whatever. At first we were just talking, and this is probably where I screwed up. I was talking about how I just moved here and he asked if I moved here with someone or family. I stupidly said I moved here alone but have friends in the area, not thinking that he will put two and two together, dropping me off alone. Living alone act. He then asked if I have ever been to the beach here and I said not yet as it's my first week, so he asked if I wanted to go and this is when I started to sober up very quickly. I said no, it is midnight. I want to go home. He then pulled over into this creepy empty parking lot, and said over and over again, "Let me know if you want to go. I need to know now. The exit is right there," and he is pointing over at the exit across the street. He said he would go with me. I tried to sound very calm and just kept saying, "No, I need to go home. My friend is waiting to me at my apartment." He then pulled out of the lot very quickly and started speeding towards my apartment. During this time, he grabbed my hand and was rubbing it. I had pepper spray in my bag, so I mentally started to reach towards my bag, but I could not move. I was so terrified. I actually could not move. I couldn't move my hand away. I was scared he would freak out and bring me somewhere and rape or murder me. So I just sat there like an idiot with this strange man rubbing my hand for 10 minutes. We pulled up to my apartment complex, which was very large, and I had him drop me off at the first set of buildings, so he didn't know where I lived exactly. I just acted dumb and ran out of the car. As soon as I got up to my apartment, I started uncontrollably sobbing on my floor. I never reported it. I never told anyone, and I know that is stupid cause someone else could get actually hurt by this man. I am normally the girl who will read an article about some girl getting hit on, grabbed wrong, and say, "If anyone did that to me, I would kill him all." I pity the person that ever tries to hurt me. But there I was, in that situation, and I couldn't even find the strength to move my hand.